I try to be one of the people when somebody asks me how I'm doing, I'm blessed. I'm above ground. And, every day is a struggle. You're going to have problems every day, but as long as we're alive, man, it's no better feeling. Definitely prayer. Prayer for me is first, waking up, reading a little, not much, but it's reading certain things to get my mind, get it clear to where I need to be. And just, structure, man, like just a structure for yourself, either that, like having your morning tea, working out, just trying to search for quiet time too. It's like when you think of just your daily life, how many minutes out of a day you really think that you have quiet time? It's not many, but just trying to find those times and places and spaces that, I could just really get into a zone of just reflecting and dissecting what I really want to do. I think a lot of things is pressure in life, man. A lot of people, if you, depending when you grow up, you're not thinking outside of the box, or, some people don't dream. They look at it as a necessity, like how can I get out, but not dreaming to the full potential of what that outlet could be. I think a lot of us are faced with an overload of information now, where there's a lot of comparison going on instead of seeking our own path, with so much information coming through social media, television. I always say life is like a hard drive. We input, 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 but a lot of us don't get the output. And, for me, I think you have to just step back a minute. We always hear people say, I need to take a break from social media. I need a vacation. Or like, I think the more we get into ourselves, the more clear you'll see and the more you'll be able to dream. The path for me was just ever evolving, growing up in the hood, between New York and Philadelphia, seeing so many things of sixth grade, girl get shot in school with a shotgun, the evolving of crack in the neighborhood, drugs. I just wanted to be like, what could I do to advance me from the situation that I've seen living in the community. Music, started out as a DJ at 13, learned a lot from it, kind of was like early stages of marketing for me because doing parties, I was making my own flyer, DJing, part of it MCing, not rapping, but MCing, controlling the crowd. And I think DJing showed me a lot, being able to, travel all over the world, DJ at colleges, helping me meet people, politicking or, having conversations with all different people, walks of life. But music helped me really get on that path to understand, all the different outlets I could be able to do. Growing up in, the 80s and early 90s when hip hop was just starting blossoming and finding its own of, growing up in Queens, New York, around Run DMC and Sweet Tea and LL Cool J, but then going back to Philly, back and forth with Jazzy Jeff, Fresh Prince, is Steady B and Cool C, and then you seeing that evolve to Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, The Roots, just all my friends and family of the State Properties and the Locks and them. So it was a learning experience from both states. Also being a DJ, I got a chance to understand technical skill of scratching and DJing from Philly with like Cash Money, Jazzy Jeff, DJ Miz, but then coming to New York, seeing other DJs of Kid Capri and New York DJs had the vocals. They was hosting like Doo-Wop, SNS, Ron G. They was like, bounce, come on. It was like this MC, like a moment of MCs over the records to create a feeling of the parties. But then Philly had all the Transformer scratches and the crab. So going back and forth and learning that in the styles, the styles of fashion in New York compared to the styles in Philly, just so many things that I got to be able to go back and forth. And I think that is what curated me, who I am today, to be able to grow up in both of these great towns, just hip hop culture, music, fashion, sports, and just everything. It goes back to being young, when I was young, having my toys, I was building worlds. I remember busting a bag of flour open and put it inside of a sneaker box, and now my toys was playing in the snow. Or I'm going outside, grabbing a bag of dirt, taking it inside, putting them in the mud, like and it was just like always, no matter from DJing, being like, okay, what rock record goes with a rap record, or what, Aerosmith Pump album, blending that with like Mobb Deep's first album. It was like, the same thing with my company name, which is called Compound. It was always about putting things together, people, place, things, or feelings. And that's kind of been my recipe to this date, like thinking outside of the box, but putting things together. For me, when two things connect, it's just like how they say the Big Bang Theory. When them two planets collided, it's a feeling of excitement. It's a feeling of relief that it's so powerful. I think we don't take it. We take it for granted that a thought becomes a reality, and then that reality becomes an emotion. And you look at movies. It's a director that wrote this whole thing out, but then he sees it on screen. Then he sees somebody cry. Like that feeling. It's a combination of many feelings. From happy to sad to anxiety of just like, okay, the moment is here that these two things came together to project to the world. So I don't think it's just one feeling. It's a lot of emotions. Like for me with the And1 mixtape, I knew when I put those two together, like what it was gonna do. But then to see it, the reaction of kids and NBA players and record labels, and the feelings went an array of different avenues. Just think about any two things when they come together. It's a feeling. If that's man and woman, it's like, it was simple, like peanut butter and jelly. You can eat peanut butter by itself, but if you eat it with jelly, it comes together in a whole different world. So, for me, even when the start of my marketing career, when I created the And1 mixtapes, putting basketball and hip hop, they always been together, but putting them together on a VHS tape, that feeling was, something like no other. So the connectivity brings a feeling, like I said, man and woman, father and son. Like, even you and your daughter, when y'all walked in, looking at y'all two, like this man has his child on a production trip. That feeling made me was like, he's a good father, So connectivity brings feelings that we really need to embrace. They say, it's nothing new under the sun, but it's a lot of cool things in the shade. So that's a line I live by. So it's always about taking what's in the past, but remixing it a little bit. So it's nothing wrong with taking something from the past, but putting it in today's context with your own spin. And I think long as you do that, we look at the Jordan catalog. Just that alone is not going nowhere. They're on like Jordan number 28, but kids are still going crazy about the ones and the threes and there are ways, you can mix something from the ones with the 11s and come up with something totally new. Life is like a Thanksgiving dinner. When you was a kid, right? You used to always go to the kitchen and your mom be like, come back later. You'd be like, mac and cheese done? You'd be like, no. You'd be like, candy yams done? You'd be like, no. She'd be like, well, you could take it to turkey, but you got a chance to taste a little bit. And then you keep coming back to taste this meal. And then when you look at a stove and you think about Thanksgiving dinner, usually 4 burners on the top, then you got the oven, and then you got the bottom, the broiling part. For some reason, nothing was never cooked at the same time. But at the same time, when dinner was ready, everything was hot. And we talking before microwaves, and that's how I kind of look at life. The mac and cheese might not be ready. And if I can't get that feeling over there with that, I'll come back to that. And then I'm gonna go to the candy yams. Now, that might not be ready, but if the stuffing's ready, that's what I'm gonna focus on. And then come back, and then, life is about the complete package. It's not just one thing. So I always looked at life as Thanksgiving dinner. Everything's cooking, but it ain't gonna be done at the same time. But when it's time to eat, it's gonna be right. Validation of what I've already learned to stay on it. Sometimes you know things at a young age and you go away from them because you start trying new things, and like situations make you feel like, however you start something, you can finish it, but it might be a longer path. Nothing's gonna happen in the timing you want it to happen. But if you never quit, you will win. And that's kind of what I live by. Like, from things and me building my gallery again after pandemic. I didn't ever think I was gonna get my compound back, my art gallery back, but didn't stop. It wasn't right there to build it at that time, and I wanted to. So then I focused more on directing. the directing was slowing up. A lot of brands wasn't doing it. Okay, now I'm gonna focus on creative direction. But what I've learned is in this process is just go back to how this all started, and just never stop. You will win. A lot of people look at the current moment you in. You think of an interview, right? They get a person on, they be like, they wanna ask them what's happening within like the last month. Like, okay, your new album's coming out or your new movie's coming out. Even before I get to that part of the conversation or the story of the interview, I'm going back. I want to go back to the start, because the more you always take somebody back to the start of anything, that's when the essence. And like, so when a brand calls me and they be like, well, we ready to do this for our new campaign. I'm like, well, if I don't know the origin of the brand, the story of the brand, the heritage of the brand, like that's what keeps me, being able to, I think, work with all the brands I work with. I live by a line, everybody has a story, but so I don't want to start at the end of the story to start working with you. I need to understand the beginning of the story. And if I understand the beginning of the story, I'll know how to tell your story better. The relationship was already there with Clark's for 3 or 4 years, but, that was a big job. And being a black guy to direct that, this story from a company, from Street, it was an honor. But I said, if the only way I'm directing this is if y'all have to fly me to headquarters and I have to start and interview the family. I need to interview the archivalist. And it was like, okay, I'm an American. I know Ghost and Slick Rick and Raekwon, and I know a little bit of the Jamaicans wearing it, but I didn't know about Liam Gallagher, and I didn't know what was going on in Jamaica, and I didn't know what was going on in UK. So for me, it goes back to, I got to understand the story. And I said, once Clark's brought me out to the town of Street, and I climbed 1,000 steps to go up to the top of the tour, and once I understood the brand and understood the story, now I can say I can direct this. Because you got to be real with yourself. I couldn't look at the check and be like, it's good money. But if I would hurt myself if I don't tell the story the right way. The brand's not going to put it out. So for me, it's always doing the research, and I had to make sure I felt comfortable to say I know enough of the story now that I can tell the story the right way. I mean, it's everything we live by, like everything about it. A book, most books are stories, and when you meet somebody, you meet a relationship, you want to know where somebody's from. Like everything is a story. So if you don't get that out and you don't try to search for that story, not just the meaning, because the meaning changes along the way. Things change along the way. But if you understand the story of a person, the story of a company, the story of, a product, it for me, it's the answer to everything. Like they say, content is key, but I go the line before that. You can't have content if you don't tell the story. So the story is key to the content. I think a lot of people, do a lot of things and they don't look at the title, or they give themselves that. But also during that time, I met Chris Robinson, which was a director, and I actually brought him on to direct Kevin Garnett 2 commercials for And1, and we became best friends now. He's my brother, he's my mentor, and I got a chance to shadow him all through the years of like the Beautiful video, the Nas One Mic video, the Busta Rhymes Pastor Cavassier, and I worked on ATL the movie, Shooting Stars LeBron movie, and through the years I got a chance to watch him and hone my craft and understand storytelling and understand cameras and lenses, and then I looked at like all the other things that I did, and I said, okay, you know what? Now it's time to understand and really be that road of being a director. So it was, I was directing all my life, but I didn't feel I was a director until, I wanted to shadow somebody. I wanted to put the time in, and I believe school isn't everything. Education is just learning. And I had to learn, and I was blessed to learn under Chris Robinson to be, the director that I am now. I had mentors by watching their life and studying them, because you're not going to be blessed to be able to have that person next to you all the time. I think if you want somebody to mentor them, study their life, see what they produced or what they executed. If it was, if you love a famous author, read a lot of his books, and then dig deeper, and then if everything aligned right and you do meet that person, and if you did all this work and this studying and the backstory and the knowledge, that can turn into a mentorship. And that's kind of what happened with me and Chris Robinson. I know he was the hottest director doing all the music videos. Then I met him, and he was like, "Oh, you did all this research on me?" I was like, "Yeah." So now he was like, "Okay, come under my wing." And I think, don't just look at it as a mentorship as being next to the person, but study the person you want to be a mentor, and you might learn a lot without having to ever meet that person. We are in a time and generation, and I understand everybody needs money, so they feel like any ounce of work that they do, it should be paid for it. But it goes back to dreamings. If you dreaming doesn't cost money. Now, will you put the work in behind your dreams? And for me, I always want to create. So, you know, you don't start creating because of money. It might take money to execute it the way you want to or get it to a certain level, but you can starting never costs no money. And that might say if you want to start a clothing company, to make the clothes you're gonna need money, but you can start drawing them with no money. So it's just the starting point of how people look at things. But to me, to create anything, it doesn't start with money. It starts with the idea, the intention, and then and how do you work to get it to the point so you need money. But all ideas don't need money to start. No idea needs money to start. It just needs the idea. I think the importance of details are important before you ship, because you know putting something together, an idea or a product, it does need the details while you're creating. But before you show it to the world or before you sell it, that's when I feel like the details are important, because you want people to notice the details. But I do a lot of things and work on a lot of things, and I'm still figuring the details out. But once it goes beyond the curtain and the stage is seen and the lights is on, that's when I think the details matter. Age is a blessing, man. It's the older we are, the more we should appreciate it. It's you can do anything you want at any age. And, it's no restrictions. But I think when you get your age, act your age. Don't become old and want to act young. I think that's where people feel like they get old and get scared. It's a blessing to get old. The music you listen to, whatever you do, just respect it from the age level you at, and then embrace younger and older. I think we hear the Bible and the Quran and all these books that people was living to 140, 200, and we scared that we in our 30s and 40s, and I hear young people saying I'm 30, I'm old. I'm like, we hope we get old these days, and I love that I'm 52. I love that, musicians and rappers and basketball players and from the youth to my age still just look at me as a person and not my age. I have a line that I say on my Instagram anytime I take certain pictures. I want to be the OG that's not in the way. Life should be a baton. There's sayings we have called pass the torch, but nobody wants to pass it. So when I look at my thing is another line I live by is I hang with the youth so I can see the future. I need them around me. I want them around me. I'm gonna keep it a friendly battle of they ain't flying in me. They still, but at the end of the day, I need the youth around me. And, a lot of people are, whatever reasons, don't want to let go, don't want to give their spot up. But, for me, I respect the youth. I think they're the future, and the more we embrace them, the greater it is for everybody. It's a great, man. It's a great feeling that people look to me, listen and hold on to my words. It also holds me to a standard of life. I can't do nothing corny. I can't do nothing stupid. I can't sell myself out. My father always told me, at the end of the day, if you can fall asleep at night and know you haven't wronged nobody and did nothing out of your character, you'll be a better man. So, that's even with brands. If young kids in the neighborhoods are looking up to me, because they want to work with brands like me, I can't show a woman in the wrong way in a brand. I can't degrade my culture or just the human race in a campaign I'm doing. So it kind of once people look at you in a certain level, if you value yourself, you got to hold yourself to that standard. And I think the people that look to me for whatever they look to me for, I just want to make them always be like, okay, Free's official. It's a portion of my life always untold. I think the situation or the topic or the interview always brings out a different part of it. But I think for me, it's always connecting it back to God, you know. A lot of people, you know, I make examples and like situations would be like, look, we believe in oxygen, but we never seen it. we believe in fear, but you never see it, you know. You believe in doubt, but you never seen it. So I believe in God. I've never seen him, but it's working for me. This moment right now, like I said, I'm blessed, you know. I always say to be able to tell my story is something I never would have dreamed of. Growing up, you don't never know if anybody even want to hear your story, you know. But so to be able to tell my story to humans and people listen and take parts of my life and apply it to their way of life is always an honor.